General Education Classroom Workshop presented by Brandy Hughes. With an increase of inclusion of all students into the general education classes, teachers are struggling to meet the needs of students with modification. Here at Norfolk, we have 25% of our students with either a 504 or an IEP modification. We will take a look at a YouTube video about the special education versus the general education class. And he provides some really good insight on the challenges that we face in today's classroom with inclusion and the benefits of students being included. Then we will take a look at 504 accommodations and the differences between what the law says about 504 versus IEP. When we look at a 504 accommodation, usually that means a medical recommendation from a physician. The majority of our students with 504s have ADHD. With an ADHD diagnosis, we want to look at different modifications that will help keep them on task and keep them organized. They have a really hard time usually with just knowing what assignments that they have due and keeping up with them. So sometimes an assignment notebook works well as a modification if the parents are on board with that. They also need a lot of reminders to stay on task, sometimes repeated directions, reduced multiple choice, because if they have a lot to read, they're more likely to get distracted and not finish what they're supposed to be doing. An IEP, on the other hand, will indicate that the student has a learning disability of some sort. Sometimes this is dyslexia, sometimes it's a lower IQ, and they need additional modifications, as well as they usually will have one or two classes in the special education classroom that would typically be math or language, depending on what their individual needs are. But in the general education classroom, they can really benefit by many of the things that we talked about on the 504, but as well as extended time, reduced assignments. So for severe cases, allowing them to have a verbal response is easier for them. A reader for a test, usually if I have a large chapter test, I'll cut it down by half and have someone read the test to them in an alternate location. So that hits on both of those modifications. It's important for these students to be successful in your classroom. So the big question is, how can they? What's going to make them successful in the general education classroom? And I really believe that this begins with rapport with our students. If they know that you care about them and that you want them to succeed, then they're going to work hard for you. But we also have to be pretty flexible in our demands of the general education classroom, because they simply cannot perform like your general education student would. Attending meetings is also very important because you get to know the student a whole lot better. I encourage everyone to be honest, but also lead with a positive and end with a positive, and that really builds that relationship between you and the parent and the special ed student. It's important to create that environment where students can be successful. So, how do we measure success? That's something that we need to discuss today. Is how we're going to measure success of those special education students in your classroom. Also, I want to point out that this doesn't mean that giving everyone an A is the answer. The way we can help them feel more successful in the classroom is to keep them from being frustrated and give them tasks that they can succeed in. So, one thing that I want to do today is brainstorm, how do we help them succeed in the classroom? What is your plans for your classroom? What modifications can you put in place to help them accomplish what they need to accomplish in your room? And then we need to discuss how gifted and talented fits into these modifications, because they also need some individual plans to challenge their needs as